Well, good morning everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Now I have to apologize. I've actually come down to the same location as a video I did a little while ago with Brian Barnum. Come back down to Triple Falls, and there's a number of reasons why I've come down. First and foremost, the conditions, I'm hoping, have actually improved a little bit from when Brian and I were here, in that there's more water running and the fall color has changed somewhat. I'm hoping that there's a few more leaves swirling in the pools there, but there might be too much water and a lot of foam, so I'm not really sure how it's going to go. The other reason is I have some new filters that I'm going to try out from KASE Filters, and I'll talk about those filters when I get down there. Wow, there is quite a bit more water than last time, and for this waterfall here, I don't think that's really helping it very much. You'll see that the waterfall is less defined, has less individual streams of water coming down. The one thing that bugs me the most about this scene is the eddy that we had, or that we photographed before, is now full of bubbles or foam. And I know from past experience, I photographed that in the past, and it doesn't look so great. It just looks like a big white blob. I remember last time I even tried to get rid of it with a stick. However, just down here, there's another little section that actually Brian Barnum was spending a lot of time around, and it has some beautiful green mosses. And now the green moss has somewhat disappeared, but there's a really great cascade there now, and there's a little bit of fall color in that section. So I'm going to head back to that section and see if I can get something there, because I don't think this is going to work today. The autumn color is beautiful. It's just perfect. This tree here that was quite yellow last time we came here is just starting to finish, but this one is just spectacular. And then that one is kind of starting to finish as well. So yeah, I think it's going to take a few days for this to settle down. And of course, by that time, the leaves might have fallen off the trees. Wow, this is pretty nice. So as I said, last time I was here with Brian, just a week ago, I guess, this was all dry, but it had some beautiful green mosses. And actually I took a photograph right at the last minute. But I think this is going to work quite well. The full color is starting to fade. The leaves are looking a little bit tired, but I think the cascade in the foreground hopefully will pull it through. There's a great little eddy over here as well, so perhaps I might be able to incorporate that somehow as well. This is really quite lovely. I think to start with, I'm going to start off quite far back and then slowly work my way in there with a wider angle lens. what I'm finding is that even though I really love the cascades in the foreground, I quite like the water flow in the background as well. But for me to be able to show that, I have to have quite a high perspective looking down on it rather than close to the foreground with a wide angle looking across, because that's just going to be cut out. Now, it might end up being a better shot, but I'm going to start off with quite far back and then slowly work my way in. Hopefully it doesn't clear too much, because I noticed there's some hot spots coming in here which just adds too much contrast. It is quite cloudy today, but I noticed it's clearing up pretty quickly. So it's going to be kind of like the other day when I was here with Brian. It was quite sunny, and then the clouds moved in for a little bit, and then it got sunny again. Right, the light is not being very cooperative at the moment. But while I wait for the clouds to hopefully move in, why don't I talk a little bit about a couple of new products from KASE filters. Now, some of you may have noticed that lately I've been talking a lot about KASE filters, and the reason being is that I'm an ambassador for KASE, so this is a paid video, just to let you know. One of the things that I mentioned in my last video about filters was that the adapter rings, because some of them are step-up rings, they kind of make it really hard, if not impossible, to use your existing lens hood, unless the filter happens to be the same size as the front element on your lens. But as I said before, what I usually do is I'd purchase the largest filters that I need for my largest diameter lens, and then I'd use step-down rings for the other lenses. Now then, KASE have come out with somewhat of a new magnetic system where you can use a lens hood. This is their own lens hood, and it seems pretty good. The only issue with it that I have is that all of the magnetic rings that you have in your bag now, you would have to replace with these rings here, because they work somewhat in the same way as the older rings, except they're a little bit bigger. So the way that these work is that they actually screw on. Whoops, I've got to take the old one off here. So this is the old ring. So you can see it's quite a bit smaller. The new ring is quite a bit bigger, but it takes the same size magnetic filters. But the reason why it's so big is to accommodate the size of the lens hood, because this lens hood is for all types of different focal lengths. So the way that this works is that this screws on to the front of your lens, and ideally you would want to leave it on your lens permanently so that you have access to your magnetic filters really quickly. I mean, that's the whole idea. Well, for me it is. And if you keep unscrewing this, then obviously you might as well just use a screw-on filter. And the way that this works is that this lens hood just magnetically fits on to the front of your lens. And there's 4 different types of lens hood you can have, or different lengths. If you have an ultra-wide lens, you can fold it back like so. If you have kind of a medium-wide lens, then you can fold the front forward. Or if you have a longer focal length, then you can push it out like so. Or if you want to pull it back just a little bit, then you can fold back the rim at the front there. So there's kind of 4 different modes that you can use with the lens hood. And then of course, as far as filters go, if you want to get the filters in easily, you just take the lens hood off. You can put the filter in, and then you can put the lens hoods back on. Or if you have a polarizer, then you can do your polarization, you can turn it, and then once you've found the optimum polarization for that filter, then you can just stick the lens hood back on. So it's quite neat, but as I said, you're going to have to get at least 1 adapter ring, because this isn't magnetic, it's screw-on. Right then, I've taken the shot from further back, which is okay, but doesn't really emphasize the waterfall very well. Kind of split between full color and the waterfall. So what I've decided to do is start getting a bit closer, but rather than using a longer telephoto like my 32-64, I put on my widest lens, which is 23mm. And with the 23mm, getting close to your subject or something in the foreground really adds quite a lot of drama, and in this case it puts more emphasis on this small cascade in the foreground than the full color in the background. Okay, so the next new product that KASE have come out with is quite ingenious, and I guess it's an extension of the K9 magnetic system where you use the square filters. One of the issues with the magnetic filters that I've been using is that some people find that especially with the wider lenses, they get vignetting. So ideally, if you are using a really ultra wide lens, then you're probably better off using a slightly bigger filter so that you don't get vignetting. Or if you want to use multiple filters or stack them, then you're not going to get vignetting if you use a larger filter that covers more than the front of the front element. So KASE have come out with this new system called the K100 Armour system, where you have multiple, or you can use multiple magnetic filters. So I'll show you how that works. The first thing is that you have an adapter ring, kind of like all of the other magnetic filter systems that KASE produces. So this screws on to the front element, and of course you can leave this on your camera if you want to use one for each of your lenses. KASE did send me a new, it's a rubberized lens cap, but unfortunately I forgot to bring it. So you can just put the rubber cap on instead of your regular lens cap. Then you have the filter system itself, the holder. And the way that this works is that, say you want to use a polarizer, you would get out your polarizer. So let's see if we can find a polarizer here. So you'll notice that these filters are quite a bit bigger than the other filters that I was using. And the way that the polarizer goes in is, so you have your holder, and then you have your polarizer, and the polarizer fits directly into the back of the holder like that. So it's magnetized, it's not going to fall out. The magnets are actually really strong. And when I first saw this, I thought, oh, you're going to have trouble getting that out with your gloves on. But of course, the tabs to get your nails under are quite small, but you could just push it from the other side. So the magnet is quite strong. It's stronger than the original magnetic Wolverine filters that I was using. And then this just pops on like so. It has a magnet. It's very secure, and it also has a little latch there so that it clips onto that as well. So the only way to take this off is to pull the clip back and then pull the whole filter holder off. Now then, how do you turn the polarizer? Well, you'll notice that on the side here, there's a little independent wheel, and you just turn that, and all it does is turn the polarizer within the holder here. Now then, say you wanted to use, I don't know, an ND filter with the polarizer. What you do is you grab your ND filter, and that just fits right into the front there. So now we have two magnetic filters in there. If you still want to maneuver your polarizer, you can turn the wheel and it turns the polarizer individually. Doesn't affect the front, it's not turning the front. Now then, say that you still use graduated neutral density filters. Now I personally don't use them. I do most of that stuff in Photoshop. I'll take one exposure for the highlights, one for the shadows, and then combine them in Photoshop. But I know some of you out there still use the grad filters. So here we have one of the Armour grad filters right here, made out of tempered glass, and you'll notice that it has a magnetic ring around the outside of that, and this just simply connects straight to the front of the holder. If you want to move it up and down, it moves up and down quite simply. If you want to add more security to this filter, like say you're worried about it falling off, it does have a little dial on the side here where you can tighten that up into position. So now it's not going to move. So you have three individual filters. You can still maneuver the polarizer individually. If you want to adjust the grad filter, just slide it up and down. It doesn't affect the other two filters. So all in all, it's a really great system, I think. They're really onto something here. The only pitfall with this that I can see right now is that the lens hood that I just showed you does not work with this system. So they're two separate systems. It's really unfortunate because I was really hoping that that would work with this, but I'm sure at some point KASE will probably come up with perhaps some lens hood that fits onto this system as well. I'm not sure how that would work, but it seems that they're reasonably innovative. They're trying to come up with new ideas, and that perhaps is on the books. So if you have any questions about this, be sure to leave them in the comments down below. I haven't really used it very much, so I can't really give you my feedback on use, but my initial thoughts are that it's a really neat system, and I think it's quite practical. Not too much faff. I think I found a scene worthy of a photograph. Same waterfall. The neat thing about this waterfall is that it only really runs when we get heavy rain. So even though right now the lower falls and the upper falls aren't looking great for photography, this is perfect. And what I like about this is, even though there's a lot of foam that's kind of getting in the way, there is a really great little eddy in the foreground here. So with a slow shutter speed, I can create that kind of swirling action. Now the only problem with doing that is, as soon as I use a long shutter speed, anything else that moves is blurry as well. The waterfall itself, I don't really want it to be a really long shutter speed because it just looks like mush. So ideally, I like to photograph waterfalls like this around 1/5 of a second. There is some movement in the leaves and the trees. 1/5 of a second isn't quite fast enough. So ideally, you probably want it around 1/15th to 1/30th of a second. So I'm gonna have to take an individual shot for that, an individual shot for the actual waterfall, and then the foreground, I'll probably have to use an ND filter. So I've kind of figured out what the foreground needs to be, and it needs to be 10 seconds. I have to use an ND filter because even at the lowest ISO, stop down to f16, the slowest I can get it is around 1 second. So I've put on an ND8, and that should be long enough or dark enough to slow that shutter speed to get the foreground that I want. And I'll take multiple images because what I've noticed is that every time you take a different image, the swirls are different. Some might have 2 eddies in them or swirls. One, they might be over to the right, might be over to the left. So it's different every time. So it's nice to have some different options that we can sandwich together later in Photoshop. Right, everybody. Well, that was really good. I'm glad I came down here and found that somewhat seasonal waterfall. That's what I like about exploring areas that you've been to over and over again. Every now and then something will happen, either in the weather or something will be moved or changed, and it just makes all the difference in your photography. Now, unfortunately, the other two waterfalls didn't really get anything from those. It's just too much water flowing. But that mid one there was really beautiful. So right, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give me the old thumbs up. And if you do have any questions about the KASE filter system, be sure to leave a comment down below. As I said, haven't really used it enough to give it an in-depth kind of review, but I'll try to answer your questions the best I can. All right, luckily it's not too far to hike out of here, and I haven't had my breakfast yet, so go and have some breakfast and a nice cup of tea to end the morning session. All right, everybody, till next time, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.